The relief and celebrations which greeted the release of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and Anoosheh Ashoori from detention in Iran were tempered by the knowledge that a third prisoner, a British-born prisoner, Morad Tahbaz, was left behind. He was supposed to come back on the same flight as the other British-Iranian nationals, but he never got on the plane. Instead, he was released on furlough before being sent back to prison 48 hours later. That's where he is today, on the 9th day of a hunger strike. To talk to us about the latest situation, I am joined by his daughter, Roxanne Tahbaz. Roxanne, thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us. Can I just start by asking, what is the latest with your father?
So he is still in Evin Prison. He's on day 9 of his hunger strike, but we have been encouraging him as a family, privately and now publicly, to end his strike, because it's quite essential to us that he's in good health, and hopefully he'll be back with us soon, so we want him to be well.
Have you got any idea of what his mood is like since the release of the other prisoners?
He feels quite forsaken and really deserted. We've all always been assured by the FCDO that he was going to be included in the deal that they were working on, and so it came as quite as a shock to see the others come home and back to their families, and for him to have been left behind, and not just left behind, but also left in prison.
But just to go back to that moment when last week the other prisoners returned back to the UK, can you just describe the feeling that you had, other members of your family had, when you realised that he wasn't going to come home?
It was devastating, and I found out through the press.
You found out through the press?
Yes,
right.
All of us actually.
So the Foreign Office didn't inform you?
No. Our nominated family member was told after she'd already seen it in the press, that we all saw it then afterwards, because they shared it round with us, and then it was surreal. You couldn't pinpoint an exact emotion because you've been waiting for 4 years plus, and to not even get a call or a meeting or anything to explain. It was just a matter of a fact at that point, and that was really shocking, the lack of empathy and consideration, really, because it's quite a huge thing to leave someone behind. I mean, he's British. He never should have been left behind. That should have protected him. We have had to trust the people that in theory know best, and the FCDO assured us that they were working on it, that he was a part of that deal. And they encouraged us to stay quiet, not to go public, and we thought, okay, well, this is what they do. They must know best, and we have to trust that and let them do what they do best, which sadly has been a great disappointment.
And can you just describe the sort of conditions that he will be having to live with, has lived with for, 4 years now? 4
years.
In prison?
I actually don't know, because he never talks about it.
Does he not?
He's a great dad and a wonderful husband, and whenever we get a moment with him, it's always, tell me about what's going on with you, how are you, how's work, how's your life. He's so keen to be focused on the positive things, because I think he doesn't want us to worry. And that, I mean, to be in that situation and to still be a pillar of strength for the rest of your family, I think we've been very fortunate, really, to have someone so mindful, really, and just always thinking of the rest of us. It's hard, because you know that he must be feeling so alone, and there's not anything really we can do. But I'm here today because if this is the only thing I can do, I want to do everything.
And of course, your mother is on a travel ban. She can't go to the US or to the UK. Just describe the condition she's in, where she's staying.
She's in a close relative's home. She's all right, but I think she has to be all right. And it's difficult, obviously, because she's my dad's lifeline and his only point of contact. So they're there for each other. But she's still a mom. She calls in every day to check on all of us, and worries always, because that's what moms do. But it's hard for her to not be with us or be able to be there for us.
Let's just talk a bit about the London connection.
Yeah.
You live in London.
I do.
Your dad was born in London.
He
Just tell a
was.
bit about the London roots, the connection you have here.
My dad was born in London. He went to boarding school here for many years. He's British, even his humour. And I moved here about 10 years ago, and a lot of that stemmed from travelling here as a child quite regularly and frequently, and we continued. Well, I've stayed, but my dad was travelling here quite a lot over the last few years as well, before he was detained.
He has a British passport, doesn't he?
He does.
As well?
He was born in Hammersmith Hospital here in London,
Right.
and he spent most of his childhood here.
So he sees himself very much as a Brit.
Oh yeah.
So does that mean that he feels that it's the British government rather than the US government? Because he also has a US passport, doesn't
Yes.
he?
Well, he was naturalised as a US citizen after moving there. But I don't think moving somewhere makes you any less your natural-born citizenship. I don't think that should have been a reason to have been left behind, which is something that's been brought up time and time again. But we were also assured by the UK government that he was being considered as a British citizen because he is a British citizen, and that he was a part of their negotiations, and that we could entrust him to them, and that they'd bring him back for us.
Let's talk a bit about that deal then. You obviously appeared at the press conference alongside Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and Richard Radcliffe the other day. How did that feel to be part of that? Because obviously there was a lot of celebration, a great deal of relief in the room, but then you were still suffering.
It was bittersweet. Richard has been a wonderful guide and mentor in a lot of ways for us, because he's really forged the way. Nobody has a roadmap to something like this. And Nazanin, actually, when she was on her furlough for the last 2 years, she spent quite a lot of time with my mum, and we grew really close to both of them in different ways. So we were over the moon for them, but also it was difficult because you had anticipated sharing that same kind of happiness, and it was really hard to watch everyone be so happy when you still feel quite so sad. But it was because of them that I was there, and it was because of them that we were able to highlight my dad's case. So we were also really grateful to them for sharing their spotlight and their moment of happiness, to be able to shed light on the fact that my dad was actually left behind, and to help us hopefully try and get him back.
And let's talk a bit about the government and their response. And you've already mentioned how they didn't inform you. You found out through the media that your dad wasn't coming back on that flight. What contact have you had with the Foreign Office since?
The only updates we've had as a family is that they're still working on it, and that they'll update us when there's news, but that they're working on it on the highest levels. They have stood by their original statement and advice to kind of keep quiet, and as it's very sensitive, to let them carry on. But given, God, it must have been about nearly 2 weeks ago now, since that moment where we were let down so egregiously, we can't just sit on the sidelines anymore. I mean, he's become a chess piece in this game, unwittingly, and it almost feels like it's a checkmate moment. Who's going to protect him now? Who's going to hold up this end of the deal? Because the money's been paid, and he's still there. So what leverage is there to assure us that he will be okay, that he will in fact be a part of that deal? Because it's been nearly 2 weeks and he's still in prison, and my mum's still on the travel ban.
What was your feeling, and I think you touched on this earlier, but when the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss was being quite jubilant on Twitter about the deal being done and the success. Just describe how that felt.
It was very upsetting because we had had no clarity on what was being done to rectify the fact that my father had been left behind and that no aspect of the deal that we were promised was upheld. So it was quite shocking to see that was a celebratory moment, because we're right where we started 4 years ago, where we don't see that happiness. We're very happy for Nazanin and Anoosheh's families, but we were meant to also be one of the families that would have had their lives back. And I mean, we've been virtually orphaned by this political pawn game, and for what?
Do you think she should apologise?
I'd prefer she got the job done. I could live without the apology if I could have my dad back. I think it's been really difficult not having any clarity, and all the miscommunications is not helped. And I mean, we've urged and begged and pleaded that the deal be upheld. But it's been days and there's no movement. So, well, at least not from what we can see. So.
What about the Prime Minister? What about Boris Johnson in all this? Because obviously he was Foreign Secretary at the time, and now Prime Minister. He has great influence. Has he tried to make contact? Have you tried to make contact with him or his office?
We've been working very closely with the Foreign Office. We've worked with anyone and everyone we can to raise this at the highest levels, because it's now quite a sense of urgency around this. I haven't heard from him myself.
Have you tried to make contact with him?
Well, you go through the red tape, right? So you have to kind of work your way up the chain. It's just so shocking and devastating that nothing's been done, nothing's been said that's more than, we're working on it. Well, what are you working on? Because, they're still there. Like, how are you going to fix this? I mean, if there's no leverage, what can you do? And it would just be nice to have a frank conversation with someone who can actually, deliver on this deal that was made. So for us, it's the having. I mean, you almost feel like you've been lied to. That trust feels quite broken. Where, we'd love for it to be mended, but that means that there has to be delivery. There has to be results.
What's your message to Boris Johnson?
Get him home. They promised, and, we would love, obviously, to be reunited as a family. We're desperate to be reunited as a family, and he was born here, he's British. There's no excuse for having left him behind.
Just to finish off then, what would be the sort of ideal first day you would spend with your dad when he does come home? Let's hope he comes home. And when he comes home, what would you like to do? What do you think he would like to do?
I think he'd just want to be with all of us. I don't think he'd really mind where or what time of day or anything. I think we've always been a really close family. We always spent so much time together. I think it would just be having that moment to finally, after all these years of so much emotional and physical pain, to be reunited, and even to just sit and have a meal together at home. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter.
Is there a particular place in London that he's very fond of, that he would want to go to, do you think? Or
I think he'd want to be anywhere where his family is, but I know he has very fond memories of Richmond Park from when he was a small boy, and he loves nature and the outdoors, so even if it was a picnic there or just family, and family's everything.
Just to be free.
Just to be free, yeah.
Okay, Roxanne, thank you very much.
Thank you.